Vahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namah Shivaya and welcome to our meditation. So this past weekend, we're having on Sundays we're having a satsang. We started this a week ago, so this was the second week, and it's on Zoom, and students are kind of logging in, and there's a topic, and we're talking about it, and it's a really wonderful way right now to reconnect, but also just to kind of think about many of these teachings of yoga, and this week the idea was um, embracing change and moving through change gracefully. And there were some real wonderful points that were brought up. And people had a lot of really insightful things to say. And the morning after, one of the people who was participating, Sally, she wrote me a really very heartfelt, mindful email about some of the things that troubled her about what we were talking about and where we were hoping that things were going because of the coronavirus and embracing change. And she said, there's a lot of people who were left out, and she started talking about the structure of social classism and economic divisions, and how that that we as middle class people who were participating in this were lucky and kind of fortunate, and that we had kind of a safety net underneath us to protect us from the real hardships of the virus in a lot of ways. And the poor people who were on the lowest economic levels were really suffering, that they maybe don't have the ability to take time out of their day to even contemplate this kind of thing, this how change affects you, and that the upper 1% is completely insulated from the problem. They have the ability just to not think about change because things aren't going to change for them. So it was very insightful, and it got me to thinking a lot about some of the teachings and how uncomfortable, we as Westerners are with a lot of the ancient teachings of yoga. In fact, we're so uncomfortable with it. You will hear American yoga teachers say, well, I don't care what ancient Indian teachings are. I don't care how people practice yoga 2,000 years ago. That's not my problem, or that's not what where I'm coming from yoga, from the point of view I'm coming to yoga at. And in fact, when people say that, they're missing out on something about these teachings. But Sally's email got me to thinking about, when I first started practicing yoga, I went to a Bhagavad Gita study group with a very well-known teacher who's my friend now, actually, and he's from a specific organization, but he's really well-renowned. He teaches in universities. He's a professor and very intellectual. But somebody, stood up in the group and asked about the caste system and how he felt about how Krishna talks to Arjuna about the caste system. And I'm going to pull up that quote, and I'm just going to read it to you in English. The fourfold caste system has been created by me, Krishna, according to the differentiation of gunas and karma. Therefore, I am the author and the knower, and known as the non-doer and the implementer of this caste system. So Krishna is at this moment talking to Arjuna about what his duties are as a warrior prince who is been put in the situation he has to fight this battle. And Arjuna doesn't want to fight it. And Arjuna kind of asked Krishna about, why does he have to do it? So Krishna explains the caste system. And there's always been a lot of social activists who've not liked the Bhagavad Gita and these statements that Krishna is making in terms of caste and social obligation, because it has been used against people for many, many years. They can't rise socially. But these ancient teachings, the beauty of the teachings of yoga is that, one, the yogi can always go inward and start to interpret these teachings, and I put quotations or marks around that interpretation, but they have insights. These teachings were never institutionalized. There was never, a pope and bishops and cardinals who then say, this is orthodoxy. This is how you have to see these teachings to actually be accepted into the organization. That didn't exist in this culture. So you had teachers teaching it, and they would go into meditation, and or something would come up, and they would have insights into a statement or the dialogue that was happening in spiritual texts, and then they would start teaching that. They would have, and these insights were inspired by the situation, and they could change from decade to decade, from time period to time period. They were never static. They were always fluid and flexible. And so when I read what Sally wrote, I told her, I said I totally agreed with her 99% that there was a certain privilege and class situation that was happening on that Zoom satsang, that we were in a comfortable place to have that discussion. And there are many people who just don't care at the top and are isolated, and their lives are not going to change at all. And then there are people that on the bottom level, and Sally had pointed out that she was delivering food right now to minority, poor, gay, and trans people who were really being affected by the shutdown and the virus. And she was kind of saying, there are people out there who are really hurting. There are people, and it was really heartfelt what she was saying. And I thought about it for a few moments, and in the American system, let's be honest, America has a caste system. America has always had a caste system. It's a hidden caste system. It's a caste system based not on birth, and even sometimes it can be, but it's not based on total birth. It is based upon, education. It is based upon finance and money. It's based upon race. It's based upon gender. But we have always had a system in place. It is unspoken about, and it's not acknowledged because we all feel uncomfortable talking about it. We don't like talking about the fact that people come into this life, even in this country, and the idea of the American dream, it's a rigged game. It's rigged. Um, but when we look at 200 years of history, um, from really the conception of the country, a lot of the activism in this country, progressive social activism, has come from the middle class. It has come from a class that was slightly comfortable enough that they were trying to reach for that next tier up, and they had the financial and educational means that they could confront the institution. Um, the founding fathers were all wealthy landowners, but soon after the founding fathers, created the country, less than 100 years into it, you had the abolitionist movement, the anti-slavery movement, and that movement was really fired up by women in the middle class. They felt that slavery was wrong, and it was an injustice, and a lot of those women were also tied to the suffrage movement, which was a much longer fight for that ability to vote and be part of the political system. But that was all middle class. You had a few very well-educated people at the top who were supporting a cause, but the mass of the marchers, the people who were out there, were middle class. When you look at the anti-war movement of the 60s and the 70s, this was all the middle class. Why? The rich could buy out of it. The poor had other worries to worry about. They were just sucked into it. It was the middle class who had that ability to actually kind of step up and demand change. Then you had the whole, and when we talk about the environmentalist movement and the animal rights movement, this has all been very middle class driven. So when Arjuna and Krishna are having this conversation, Krishna is saying to Arjuna, look, it's your duty to fight. I'm not telling you have to fight. You can make a choice. You can walk away from this or you can fight, but it's actually kind of your dharma, your obligation to fight. Because if you don't fight, there are going to be people in other castes below you that are going to suffer. They're going to be the ones who really lose out in this war between good and evil, right? And so we as Americans are faced with this same situation. We as the middle class can, hope and dream of going back to our days of, shopping and getting deliveries from Amazon and running our kids from this soccer match to violin lessons to swimming lessons to skating lessons to, tutoring in math, keeping them active 7 days a week because you have the money and the privilege to do that. We can join clubs like Wine of the Month and, feel very bougie about life, that we're getting a little taste of the good life because you're getting that special bottle of wine every month. You can get your hair done, you can get your nails done, you can buy the car, that sports car that every guy wants, the top comes off, and feel like you stepped up a tier. we can really take this time and we can see our ability to help those in need of help, those that are suffering, and start to question how the system has been rigged. It's not the 1% that's going to do that. And for those at the lowest tier of economics, education, and social standing, they don't have the means, possibly. A lot of times the middle class brings those people into the fight for justice against injustice. But it's rare that that group has the sustainability to keep the dialogue going long term. Just historically. So when we talk about this idea of change and embracing change, we have to see that it's not just, for those that are in a comfortable place financially, economically, educational, socially. We have to think about the ones that are being left behind. And this virus, because it's an act of nature, because it's kind of beyond our control, it is the catalyst to really think about what our dharma is in society, what it means to be privileged. That if you have been given a chance in a life to have privilege, how are you really using it? Are you using it wisely? Are you squandering it away? Could you still have a very good, comfortable life and allow and work for others to have a comfortable life also? So I'm actually hopeful that this time of this shift, that the change will be that both that middle class in America and that class that's been left behind will kind of be shaken up and start to work together. And that the people in the middle will work for the people that have been left behind. And the people that left behind will understand that if there's been animosity or resentment, now's the time to let go of it so that they can work together as a bigger group to be the vehicle for change, positive change, progressive, positive change. But we can't do that unless there is that satsang, or that ability for people to talk about it, to think about it, to have those discussions. And this is the same thing that happened within the anti-slavery movement. Women in northern states got together in kind of salons, and they read books and they talked about issues, and then they went out and they petitioned, and they talked to politicians, and they talked to their friends, and that was the whole stirring of it. Same thing with the suffrage movement. Same thing with the war effort, the anti-war effort of Vietnam and Korea. The same thing that happened. This is the same thing that happened within the HIV movement, right? I've been talking a lot about that because there's a lot of parallels here. It was middle class gay men that really got active. They were, the people in New York who had jobs and the luxury of actually having time to start progressive, active political movements for social change. Because that's your dharma. When we mix these ancient teachings into our modern Western lives, the answer is that while while we don't like the idea of class, while we don't like the idea that there's social injustice based upon all kinds of isms, the truth is that those that have, it's your dharma to help the have-nots. And that's a spiritual teaching. It's not a social teaching. It's a spiritual teaching. And these ancient teachings from another culture can work within our lives if we allow them to work. If we take the time to understand them as yogis in a yogic way, which is to sit with it, to listen to the inner wisdom within yourself, not run off and listen to the pundits or the priest or the guy who's been institutionalized by an organization with a religious ideology about these texts. The wisdom is there. The wisdom is within you. What is your dharma right now, and how can you go into a situation going forward where you are part of a movement for change that is good for all in society, for humans, for the earth, for animals, for the air, for the water, everything. What is it that you can do to be a part? Are you just dying to go back into the same old habits you had before this happened? Just to fall back into what was comfortable? Don't do that. Don't do that, because there's no way possible we can go back to what we once experienced. It's in the past. We have to now look to moving forward. And the yogi, while they're always in the moment, and we can talk about what that means at a point during these meditations, being in the moment, the yogi knows that the moment is always moving forward. So taking a moment, sitting up tall, closing your eyes, and focus your mind. Allow the breath to deepen. Allow the inhale and the exhale to be deep and full. As you inhale, focus on the sound of Om within yourself. Inhale deep, hearing the sound of Om. And exhale deep, hearing the sound of Om within yourself. Inhale. Om. Exhale. the sound of Om. Exhale the sound of Om. As you inhale and you hear the sound of Om within yourself, within your mind's eye, see the symbol of Om. As you exhale and you hear the sound of Om within yourself, see the symbol of Om within the mind's eye. Inhaling Om. Exhaling Om. Continue that. Continue to deep inhale and complete exhale. Inhale the sound of Om. Om. Exhaling the sound of Om. Silently tell yourself, I am not this body. Silently tell yourself, I am not this mind. Silently tell yourself, I am not these thoughts. Silently tell yourself, I am not these emotions. Tell yourself, you are infinity, eternal, and everlasting. Inhaling deeply for the sound of Om. Bringing the hands together, rubbing the hands together to build heat within the hands. Bring the hands over the eyes. Allow the heat from the hands to be absorbed into the eyes. Bring the hands across the forehead, the top of the head, the back of the head, the nape of the neck. Bringing the hands together, bowing the head slightly, acknowledging the teachings and those that have brought us these teachings throughout the many, many centuries. Om Bolo Sadguru Bhagavan Ki Jai. Namaste, and thank you all so much for being here today. And I will see you tomorrow for another meditation practice.